Guys, today we're going to be talking about probability. It's going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to be talking about three events. It's going to be die, what we call a fair die, just a plain die. And then we're going to talk about marbles in the bag. And then finally, we're going to focus on deck of cards. So to begin with, we're going to start with the die, probably the simplest one because it has the least amount of outcomes. And it's going to make a lot more sense once we talk about outcomes and probability. So whenever it comes to probability, we're going to be using this formula. So it's basically going to be P, which stands for probability. And then on the top, we're going to have what we call the specific outcome, meaning that we're going to look for a specific scenario. And on the bottom, we're going to have the total number of outcomes. Let me go back. Total number of outcomes. Okay, so for the die, it's gonna be pretty easy because the die only has 6 sides. So whenever we talk about the die and probability, the bottom number is always gonna be 6 because it's the total number of outcomes you can have for a die. Now the top one is 100% depending on what kind of scenarios we're gonna be creating. To begin with. Probability can be represented in different ways. We can have a fraction. Let's say you have a fraction is 1/2. All right. Now, if you put that in your calculator, meaning you actually do the division, the fraction, we're gonna get what we got, the decimal. You might give me the decimal, which in this case would be 0.5. And now after that, if you want to get the other option would be a percent. So whenever we do probability, we can represent it in 3 ways. It can just be left as a fraction. It can be changed to a decimal just by dividing. And then finally, we can change it to percent by multiplying by 100. Okay, so make sure you write this on your notes somewhere. This is dividing, and the fraction, we just leave it alone, right? That's the way that you get it. So fraction, you divide it, you get the decimal. The decimal, you multiply by 100, and you get the percent. Okay, so that's the way that we can represent all 3 versions of a probability. All right, now let's talk about different scenarios and how they would work with this fair die that we have here on the side. So we know we have 6 sides, right? Labeled 1 through 6. Also, we know that we have even numbers, and that's going to be a big one. Even and odd numbers. Okay, so your even numbers are going to be 2, 4, and 6. Your even numbers are going to be 1, 3, and 5. Okay, that's got to be important because if we do probability, then we're going to be using this. So let's go ahead and do a couple scenarios and then call it here. For this one, I'm going to do like 3 separate videos, one for fair die, one for the back, and one for the deck of cards. That way it's like they're not too long. All right, let's go ahead and move this up. All right, let's move this up right here. Now let's go ahead and do, and I'm going to, usually whenever we do probability, we write it like this. We're going to have probability, we're going to have parentheses, and then they're going to give us a scenario that we may have. So for example, what is the probability that we're going to get an even number? Okay, so evens. All right, so we're going to go ahead and set up our formula, which we are kind of already know. So what is that going to equal to? So on the top, we need the specific scenario. So we're looking for evens. You're gonna have to count how many outcomes you can get. In other words, 1, 2, and 3, right? We have 3 different even numbers, so that number is going to go on the top. Let me pick a darker color, green. So it's going to be 3, and the total number of outcomes is always going to be on the bottom. Let me go ahead and put that always in this color. Oh, no. All right, done. So we know for a fact we're going to go here. I'm going to go black so I can put my line. And then I'm going to put this color on the bottom. So 6 is going to be the number that's going to go on the bottom. So we know for a fact that my probability is going to be 3 out of 6. All right. So 3 divided by 6. We can simplify the fraction if we want it, which we are actually going to do that. which turns into both of them are divisible by 3, so it's 1 over 2. Now, we already talked about this on the example I had on the top, so that would give me what? Equal to 0.5 or equal to 50%. I don't know if that's how you write percent. I completely forgot. Hopefully. All right. Okay, so this is going to be the probability of getting an even. Now, the probability of getting an odd is exactly the same thing because we have 3 odds. So let's pick a different one. So, let's do the probability of getting a 2 and a 3. Okay, we need the number 2 and the number 3. What is the probability I'm going to get one of those two numbers? So how many options is that? That is 2, right? The specific outcome. And now out of how many? 6. Now we can simplify this fraction, which can be 1 over 3. And as a decimal is 0.33. And then finally, as a percent, it would be 33%. Okay, so that's the way that we're going to be doing all of this ones, just so you guys can get used to getting any type of question. All right, let's do maybe 2 more, and then we'll call it here with a fair die. Now, what is the probability that I'm going to get greater than 2? Okay, it has to be greater than 2. So remember, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we got to look for every single one that's greater than 2. So we don't count 2 because that one doesn't say equal to. It says just 3, 4, 5, and 6. All of those are greater than 2. So it's going to be 4 over 6. Now 4 over 6 can be simplified as we can divide it by 2. So 2 over 3. Okay. Now that changes to 0.66, and it can be 66%. All right. Now finally, what is the probability I'm gonna get an even or odd number? Okay, I'm throwing this one in there that way you can see what happens whenever you get this type of scenario. So how many evens? 3. How many odds? Another 3. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we have 6 over 6, which is going to turn into 1, which is going to turn into 100%. There's a 100% probability you're going to get either one of those two. All right, because a number can either be even or odd. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because whenever you do a probability, the highest number that you can get is either 1 or, in other words, 100%. So probability usually works from 0 all the way to 1, 1 being the most likely that you're going to get an event. All right, that is it. I mean, if you wanted to, you just could have stopped the video and just take it. Just copy what I have right here. But if you kind of want to understand what's going on, just watch the video. The other ones are going to be a little shorter, so hopefully this kind of makes sense. I'm going to be doing the bag of marbles next, and then the last one's going to be the deck of cards.